So 6 months ago, I uploaded a long, quite rambly video about how I decided to become a statistic in the Great Resignation. I decided that I was going to give up a decently paying job that I'd been at for years in order to pursue something. And it was kind of a loosely defined something at that. But the title of the video was about why I'd quit my job to become a full-time indie game developer, so I guess that's the crux of the thing. And now, just about 6 months later, I think it's time for a chunky update. Was quitting my job a mistake? Have I made a game yet? And more importantly, if you're thinking of doing something similar, is this sustainable? Welcome back to the Point and Click Devlog, an ongoing series in which 6 months has gone by quite quickly. So I'm not going to recap the whys about my decision here because, I covered all of that pretty exhaustively in that other video, and because I can't be bothered. What's much more interesting is how's it going? Well, I think there's a few different streams to cover here, and they each cover one of those three questions. Look, I know you're busy, so if you just want to bounce, then I'll just quickly ask you, have you ever heard of Betteridge's Law? Because it applies pretty well here. That is to say, the word no is usually the answer to a leading question presented as a headline. But let's unpick things a bit, because it's not that cut and dry. So firstly, there's the game itself, which is the main catalyst for this whole life change. It's mad to think now, but when I made that I've quit my job video, I hadn't even installed Unity. I'd spent the best part of a year and a bit faffing about with art assets in a bid to put off having to learn how to actually do game dev. But I obviously believed in what I was working on because I decided to throw my whole career in the bin for it, even if I'm not that outwardly confident about it in day-to-day life. I quite often find myself telling acquaintances that I've left my job to go freelance rather than get into the weeds of explaining what I'm actually doing is hitching my wagon to some weird game dev dream. I don't know what that's about, to be honest, but maybe you have had a similar experience. I get quite embarrassed to tell people about this channel too. Anyway, so how's it been going? Well, the short answer is pretty good. I think it was naive to assume that I'd be able to pump out a whole game within the 12 months that I'd allowed myself to experiment with unemployment for, but all the same, some serious progress has been made. I'm now at a point where, aside from a fair few missing flourishes, you can play the game from the tutorial area and the prologue right up until the end of Act 1 of a planned 3 acts. My wife played what exists of the game through relatively blind, and from what I can tell, there's probably like 2 hours of gameplay built out now, which, that's pretty good, I think. The second act is by far the biggest, as that's where the game really opens up, but then the third act is quite short, so let's just say, in the interest of baby level simplicity, that I've made about a third of a game in 6 months. So naturally, I'll have it all done in a further 12 months then. No, because even if that rate of progress was that neatly replicable, that doesn't include polish, voice acting, testing, adjustments, and getting ready to actually release the thing. So I think 2023 is looking likely. But that's okay, because you know what, if I hadn't left my job, I doubt I'd have even finished that first room yet. And what's more, being able to throw myself into the game for weeks at a time has made me pretty confident with Adventure Creator, to the point where I reckon I know how to piece together just about everything that I'll need to for the rest of the game. And what's more, I've been loving the process. Now, I want to talk about this channel briefly too before I get to the juicy stuff, which is the financial gubbins and a discussion about whether doing this is sustainable at all. When I left my job, I'd just passed 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube, which was amazing, and recently the channel has just crossed over 2,000. So it's at this point where it's growing steadily, but to me there doesn't seem to be any point on the horizon where YouTube will randomly promote it to all and sundry and lift it into the stratosphere, because I'm talking about a pretty niche genre of games that I think has a kind of a natural market cap, and that's one that will hit pretty soon, I think. The main thing that leads me to think this is that whenever I try and experiment with broader videos with a more mainstream subject matter, like this one about rain, they tend to do worse than the core devlog videos. And like, my most popular video is still my first one, but I don't think many people who watch that even realise that there are more in the series. I guess my point is, I'm amazed at this subscriber account and really love that people are enjoying this stuff, but at the same time that I don't expect to see 100k in the future. I just think it will hit a hard ceiling at some stage. What's more interesting though is that the community Discord continues to grow and continues to be this amazing, inspiring and helpful hub for really talented indie developers making games in this genre. I've seen it go from this weird experiment with me and like 2 other people to this thriving place full of absolute legends that no longer needs me to function. It's grown into its own lovely thing entirely. So I guess now's a good part of the video to say, if you are a part of that community, just, thanks very much for being there. And the only other thing to say about YouTube is that my initial plan after leaving my job was to release a video every week, and that's slowed somewhat, but I think that's okay. There's no point in me making videos for the sake of making videos. I'm just gonna wait and do one when I have stuff to say. I recently went about a month between uploads. That's probably the longest I'd want to leave it, but I still don't see that as the end of the world. Oh, and if anyone's interested, a monetized channel with 2,000 subscribers will net you roughly 20 to 30 pounds a month, which I think is like $40. And that quite nicely brings us onto the aforementioned juicy stuff, the money. So look, if you're my wife and you're watching this, everything's totally fine, we're not going to lose the house. Bye! Okay, now that she's gone, let's talk finances. Back in April, I began paying myself a kind of salary from my life savings and trying to make that work across the whole 12 months, including paying what is quite a chunky mortgage at the moment. Back then, the basis of this whole voluntary employment was that I'd make a game while living off my savings for a year, sell the game, and then ride off into the sunset, or fail and have to get a full-time job again. Now, obviously, indie point-and-click games don't sell enough to enable the former outcome in the first place, but more to the point, I've since decided that, hey, I like my current lifestyle so much that I want to continue it beyond the year that I had set out, and that means I need to make some money that isn't from a full-time job. In a previous video I shared this ridiculously naive weekly schedule in which I imagined I could box any freelance work I'd get into a neat little window every Wednesday afternoon, and I mean obviously that's just insane, but I think it was because I didn't really know what, if anything, would come my way in terms of freelance. Whereas actually it's an interesting situation. Either through existing contacts or the hellscape that is LinkedIn, work has been coming my way. But it's been a bit of a weird amount of work. When it comes in, I'm nice and busy, but it seems to be a bit of a hill-valley situation where some things come in all at once and I have to completely stop game dev, some things fall apart, and some get delayed at the last minute. I remember in June I was managing leads in my big spreadsheet and it looked like July was going to be this monumental month for freelance with a huge payout at the end. But what then happened was that all that work ended up being spread out between then and like the end of October, so I'm learning not to count my chickens before they pay me, or something like that. I guess that's just freelance life in general, but the key thing is that because I haven't really been mega proactive in seeking freelance out, right now it's not enough to really be sustainable in the long run. So what am I going to do? Firstly, not panic. I'm trying to imagine going freelance as being a bit like starting a company where you don't often expect to make a profit in year one. And as it currently stands, I will make less than the savings I'm eating into this year. But beyond panicking, there's a couple of action points, if you like. As I say, I've not gone out all guns blazing to get work. I sent a couple of emails to some ex-colleagues back in April, and I've had some stuff find me, but I've not really been banging the drum. So I think what I'm going to do is wait until January, which will be about 3 months to go of the experiment, see where I'm at with incoming work then, and then go out with like an all-out assault to try and bring in some more regular clients. But here's the interesting thing. If that works, that'll mean relegating game dev down to a smaller percentage of my working week, and if it doesn't, it will mean getting a full-time job, which will relegate game dev even further. Something's got to give, basically, but I'd rather end up in a situation where game dev and YouTube can still be a decent chunk of my days. And that, I suppose, is where institutionalized begging will also come into play. And by begging, I mean Patreon. I'm not going to dive into that properly here because I've got a whole video essay's worth of thoughts about how I really struggle with the concept of asking strangers for money. But the long and short of it is that one day soon-ish, a Patreon for this channel will exist, and it will have enough in the way of actual rewards to hopefully make you think it's not a ridiculous idea to give me some of your hard-earned money on a monthly basis. But yeah, I suppose that's where we're at. What would you say is the TLDW of all that? I worry that some of this recapping might come across a bit negative, but that's just because I'm British and we naturally skew that way. In reality, this has honestly been the best 6 months of my life from a professional standpoint. I'm spending my time either working on a genuine passion project, being part of an incredible community, or doing what I'm good at in exchange for money without any of the crap that comes with office life. So yeah, I'm super happy and want this way of life to continue. It's just going to take some balancing, some tweaking, and a bit of fine-tuning to make sure that this mad year can turn into a mad decade. Thanks very much for watching. I don't do this bit very often, but hey, if you are still here, then why not join 2,000 of your fellow human beings and subscribe, or like the video, or leave a comment, whatever's easiest for you. I do read every single comment that comes in, even if I don't often know exactly what to say in response. And don't forget, of course, the community Discord is linked in the description too. Hopefully I will see you there. But look, if you don't want to subscribe, no worries at all. I will make another video at some point soon, and hopefully you might watch that one either way. Bye.